accomplish all His purposes in the world. You might be skeptical. Maybe you think all this sounds cheesy or naive. Maybe it's even offensive or disgraceful to think the God of the universe likes you and wants to be with you. Maybe it doesn't line up with your understanding of God's sovereignty or majesty. Maybe it makes God sound pathetic or needy or all too human. But here's the thing. We've become convinced through studying the Bible, through meeting God personally in prayer, and through living with God in community with others, that it's all true. We're convinced that everything changes when we believe God is glad to be with us. It changes how we experience God's presence. It changes how we live. It will change your life. When we trust that God wants to be with us, we learn to live as if we belong with God, as if we're really wanted by God. When we trust that God is giving purpose to our lives, we can freely offer our lives as a blessing to others. An appetizer. Here is a small taste of what it means that God longs to be with us and to work through us. It's a little appetizer before the main course in the chapters ahead. It comes from the Gospel of Matthew. The Gospel of Matthew is bookended by two stories. The first is the angel's visit to Joseph. After finding out that his bride-to-be was already pregnant, Joseph planned to break off his engagement with Mary. But an angel intervenes to reassure Joseph that Mary's pregnancy is all part of God's plan. Then, like a narrative voiceover in a movie, Matthew explains to his readers that Mary's pregnancy is a fulfillment of Isaiah's prophecy that a virgin would bear a son whose name would be Emmanuel. And, just so we don't miss it, Matthew tells us what that name means. God is with us. Matthew chapter 1, verses 21 through 23. This might seem like an insignificant detail at the beginning of the book, but let's go to the end of Matthew's Gospel. The last chapter ends with what is often called the Great Commission. Jesus sends his followers to all nations to make disciples, baptizing and teaching them all the ways of Jesus. But notice the last thing Jesus says to his disciples. Wherever his disciples go, whatever they might face, Jesus tells them, "Remember, I am with you always." Matthew chapter 28, verse 20. I am with you always. These are the last words in Matthew's Gospel. It's no coincidence that Matthew begins by describing the birth of Jesus as Emmanuel, God with us, and ends with Jesus announcing, "I am with you always." Matthew is making crystal clear that the main course in the meal of salvation is God with us. And God with us is not just something that happened in the past. It's a continual and permanent promise reaching into the present moment of our lives. God promises to be with us, always, no matter what. In fact, we're going to see that God dwelling with us is the main point of the entire biblical story, not just from the beginning to the end of Matthew's Gospel, but from the beginning in Genesis to the end in Revelation. God longs to dwell with humanity, and only from this place of God with us is God also working through us. But this is just an appetizer, and you can't live off appetizers. We need a full meal. To get this full meal, to receive God's daily bread, we need to know and experience God differently, and we need to read and understand the Bible differently. When the biblical meal falls short. Have you ever walked into your local grocery store and found that everything has been moved? You go to the produce section only to find bulk nuts and seeds. You go to the cereal aisle and find paper goods instead. It might take twice as long to get everything on your list because nothing is where it used to be.